Alright, here we are on a Chevrolet, and this is the customer's complaint here. Looks like our bright lights won't work, turn signal's not working, and wipers are somehow not working. So let's start with this. This is the other tool I'm going to be using. Been slightly modified to help aid in centering that. This has always been kind of the source of anger with General Motors, is trying to get that clip out of there. And there are a couple different ways of doing it, and I've got these two tools here. Somebody's been in there a few times. I think sometimes you can reach in there and just pry that out and then pry this one up and then just aid it a little bit. Just work it around each edge just a little bit. Eventually it'll start to work its way up. Alright, once that's out of your way, then you can take that clip out of there, set it somewhere carefully. When that comes off, you always want to make a mental note of how this all comes apart. You've got that spring, make sure that gets back in there the right way. And all the rest of these pieces here. Let's see. I'm just hoping that this unit inside here is not totally damaged from the looseness. The hook tool, maybe. Oh. That was going to happen. So I got the battery hooked up. Just a little bit more. Move that out of the way. Lever out, and we're gonna need, looks like 27 or 30 Torx down in here for these Torx. Let's see what I can come up with. Alright, so those are 30 millimeter down inside there. We've got to try and pry this bearing cap and bearing assembly out of here without losing any pieces. So we got to see if we can do this pretty carefully, because this is ready to come out. But what's going to happen is we've got to get that wiring harness underneath. There's got to be pulled loose a little bit, so this will come out a little further because it's kind of in a bind. So we don't want to tear anything. We need this to come out. It's probably going to be close to about 3 inches that it's going to come out. And there's going to have to be several things that go along with this whole thing at the same time. So let me see where I'm at down below. So down here, I'm going to pull this cover off. Sometimes this will make things a little easier. And besides, I think I'm going to have to mess with the dimmer switch. It may have come loose. With this column being so out of sorts, I think it might be loose. That it either knocked the pin out of the arm up here or something. Anyway, we got our wires down here, and you can see if I push them, that unit will come out a little bit better. Sometimes you can pull them out, but sometimes the best thing to do is just push them. Then what you can do is you can slowly work this thing out of here. There's a little cover on the back side that's going to pop off. And that's got part of your dimmer in it, because that's going to move. It'll be like this. It'll move back and forth like that. You put that back in there pretty easy. And I usually just put a little bit of grease on it so it'll hide itself into place, and then this whole thing can slowly once that's out of the way, you can kind of look and see what you got here. So I've got a dimmer switch deal on this side over here. This is for the dimmer switch. This piece right here. That is going to contact this piece right on this side here. And so, set that down. Do this all one-handed, but this, you can see it's arched a little bit, so that's going to go right in there, and that's going to put, you know, it's the way these GMs have always been made. Once you get them in there, they work okay. So now, what you've got to do is you've got to pull these pins out right on each side. And you've got to also remove the spring right here. And this one, take your screwdriver and push in on it and turn until it comes back towards you. And that's your tilt spring. Alright, so this is the tool that you're going to be using right here. And you have to put it kind of on the back side because there's a ridge right there. And if this thing gets in there crooked, then this little screw will break. Now, this is not a very good quality item. The original one that I used to have, I think I loaned it out and it got broken, but I've already tried this. Yeah, it looks like they may have already tried to do something with this thing and it didn't work for them, so I better go in and get some tap and dies and see what I can do to fix this. Alright. They had something jammed in there. Not sure what it was, but try and get that stuff clean as best you can. Don't want to break the tap either. When it starts squeaking like that, you gotta put some grease or something in it. Alright, now, tool. Go ahead and thread in. You want to try to get it threaded in just about as far as it'll go. Make sure that it feels like it's pretty square. And you typically just do a crescent wrench, which is one I keep in my pocket, and just slowly try to pull on it. If that thing starts turning, what can happen is it'll over tighten and it'll spin that little piece of the bolt. It'll break it off in there. So hold on to it and see if that'll do it. Hopefully this will work. Oh, I hope it don't snap it because it doesn't take much. Oh boy, that's really not acting very happy. Yeah, it's not even budging this side. Let's see what the other side does. But maybe that's why this thing's never been serviced, because they never could get the pin out. Felt like this one budged. That's your pin. It's called the tilt steering pin. And this, of course, is the tilt steering pin remover. These are about $10. 10 to 20. I've seen them $35, $40 before. We'll try something else too, because that one's being stubborn. Take a little heat. See if that's enough. What I want to try and do is get it to break loose. All you're doing is trying to reanimate the grease that this thing was assembled with 35 years ago. Well, this is an 82, so I guess you can do the math. If I can get this area to expand around it and not expand the pin itself. I don't want to melt that bushing up in there either. There it is. Stubborn little sucker, that's for sure. When you put that back together, you can put it back together with a little bit of grease, and that'll help facilitate whether or not this comes apart next time, if you in fact have to do it. So now what you have to do is this whole thing's got to come apart very carefully. Sucker. That looks like I'm gonna have to do this. Leave them on the floor because I know where they are. Muscle it out of there just a little bit. You gotta be very careful. And there she goes. Alright. Get out of the picture. Alright, so looking down inside here, this is the looseness, and these are the E-torques that you're going to have to tighten in order to get this thing back together. Now, some of these things were such a pain in the butt. Some of them you had to turn this, pop that out. Alright, that gets that out of the way. Alright. Alright, so there's your E-torques. Looks like it's the E8. So I've got my little spray can here. It's got acetone in it. I'm going to clean these. Clean in the hole. And so what we do with these is, these are the bolts that are in there. And if you keep letting that go too long, it'll actually strip this out, because remember, it's all aluminum. But you want to put a little bit of your Loctite on there, because that'll keep that from happening again. And what I did to this bolt to prep it is, like I say, I sprayed that acetone on it, and then I sprayed that into the hole and let it dry. So then we get these things in here and get them tightened to back up. You don't want to over tighten them, because obviously there's aluminum threads. Now once you do that, you can pretty much, you're done with this point. You can actually start working your way back out again. So you've got several items that have to go back in there, and this is one of them. Now, one thing you have to be careful with, and this can happen, what you'll need to do is you take you've got your steering wheel, and you want to make sure that this will actually fit back in here. So the way you do that is you figure out where that thing's supposed to be. So it's supposed to be like this in some way. So you want to make sure this point is up. You can kind of see where the steering wheel is going to be faced up, and you want to make sure that it'll actually go back in there straight up and down. See, like this here. It goes back up inside there. And the reason you have to do that, I'll show you here. The reason you have to do that is because you can force this steering shaft in there upside down. So I know that this portion goes in here, and this part of the shaft is going to be straight up and down where this piece is here. So I should be able to put the steering just like this, and it pops right into place, right there. Because if you do this upside down, if let's say you didn't know and you put that in this way, then the steering wheel will fit upside down. It won't fit straight up because I put the steering, the tires are faced forward. So now what you have to do is you've got to get this thing kind of nudged back in there. Alright, well, I got it back in there. I think the easiest way is, you know, you can pop it out this way, but what I did was I put my screwdriver in there and I turned this portion till it was like this, and it popped right back in. So you might have to, you could start the engine up, or you could try and turn the wheels forcibly or jack the tires up or something, and that'll help. Right now, this is another challenge. It's what I did off camera. So I went in and I got all the bearings clean that fell out. Kind of put them back in the cage. About the only way I know to do these that makes any sense is to put them in there first, because the bearings, these balls actually will come out this way. If you push them, they stay. If you push them in the back, they come out the front. So it might be better off if you stuck them down inside here. Just kind of sit down inside there. And then what I typically will do, you know, on these, you can never have too much grease, honestly. I like to get it in there. I mean, little buds of it like that, so you can really get it in there. You don't want that bearing to fall back out, because if it does, then the balls will get dislodged out of the little cage that they're in. And there's a race down in here. There's two of them. There's a race in there, and there's a race right on this edge right here. So you've got to really kind of get that slathered up in there so that whole bearing assembly stays in place. Now once you get that in, then all this stuff here is going to be for the ignition. So I always keep a little thing of grease with a Q-tip that you can get, and I try to slather this stuff in here as well, because you typically are gonna, you don't have to do this, but you're gonna kind of glue this in place with this grease. And it's gonna go in here, and it's gonna run right up against this piece in here, and that piece is what, you can hear it kind of turned on. Now it's off, and that's the right there's the accessory, and that's off. So you want to try and get enough grease in there to somewhat glue that whole rack in there. Now, the challenge is going to be to get this all popped into place at one time. Because this is your tilt, this is your tilt mechanism here. And what that does is it goes up into these pins, so you've got to get that up in there as well. So I kind of move this around. You gotta really be careful. You gotta stab that bearing in through that unit in there. And then you've got to move the bright light dimmer unit. It's got to be on the outside of this, which you can't see right now because it's kind of got to do about 3 things at once with 2 hands. Make sure the rack don't fall out, which it will. Of course, you got a little grease you can put on there to facilitate that thing coming out again, because it might need to come out. And once you get that, then you try to make sure that it looks good. Pull your tilt steering and make sure that it'll move, because you're pretty close on here, so that bearing should be good. And you can usually move it around just to see if the bearing didn't slip. But typically, once that bearing is here, and then that race, once that thing starts to get close, then it won't move, it won't do anything. Now we're turning on. I was able to get that piece in there. It's just a little piece that moves back and forth inside the ignition, and I just had the thing off just a little bit. So you want to make sure that your notch is up. Then when you turn it, there we go. And that'll kind of go in there and kind of hold it in place. Once that spring's up against it, it'll be a little tighter inside there. So that's what's gonna put all that back together. Alright, so once you've got to this stage, I've got my 3 bolts holding my cam in there, and then I've put the screw back in here. Now what you've got, and some of this I kind of put back together off camera, apologize, but I actually lost the filming for some reason. So you've got your spring in here, and you've got this cancel cam that'll have to go in here. And what you have to do is you've got to line up inside here. As you can see, there's a area there that's flat, and that's going to go to the flat side of this steering wheel shaft right down here. So I've got to be able to line that up down here. In order to do that, I've got to line up this cancel cam as well. So once they go in, you can kind of see how it'll go back together this way. So then you've got to make sure that you've got your clip on there. And then your special tool may have to push your tool down on there a little bit. Alright, and then down inside here there's a little groove. And you've got to make sure that that groove is exposed. And once it's exposed, then you can put your clip down inside there. You can start to finagle that clip so it goes down in there. You just got to kind of work it around this steering shaft. Screwdriver here. Yeah. Once it's in there, then you can unscrew your collar here. You gotta make sure that everything lines up. This all comes loose. And now you're right there. And now you can see it's nice and strong. It doesn't have, you've got the tilt mechanism that works good. And the lights are actually working. Now all I have to do is put the steering wheel on, and you know how to do that. So that's really all there is to that. It is a little bit fiddly. The parts are kind of small to get in and out of there, but it's doable. And I use just basic hand tools. There's a flathead screwdriver and some other stuff, but these are your tools that are going to be your biggest ones. That's your pin puller, and this is to set that lock down in there so you can get your pin or your circlip out. And basically going back together, a little bit of grease. I use a little bit of a little cup with some of these are like Q-tips. These are industrial Q-tips. You can buy them. A lot of tool trucks are carrying that little baggie with all kinds of little Q-tips. And I put a little grease on just about everything. I'll put a little bit on these threads right here. I'll put a little bit on there, and then they say to leave these splines alone because they kind of need to be dry. I typically will just put a dab of grease here, and that's about it. And that's about all there is to it. Anyway, I'm going to leave you a thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.